welcome back to another episode of Education Closet on Demand. I'm your host, Susan Riley, and I'm also the founder of educationcloset.com. This whole week at Ed Closet, we are talking about teacher evaluation, specifically how we can kind of keep up with all of the changes that seem to be happening at any given minute. Today, along those same lines, I'm going to be talking about outliers. When we think about outliers, we think about students who perform either above expectations or below expectations of any given test that we're giving. And so we tend to discredit those outliers. We throw those out because they kind of skew what we're looking for in the middle. That's technically what outliers are when we're looking at data. And because we're talking about teacher evaluations and student growth, we're really talking about data. Now, I want to kind of take a different stance on outliers a bit. My perception of outliers is that we should be embracing them. And not only embracing them, but building a classroom environment that really cultivates the outlier mentality. Here's why. There's a great book by Malcolm Gladwell under the name Outliers. And he talks in there, he uses a lot of anecdotes, but also a lot of research about the fact that most successful people are actually outliers in their given field. And it makes a lot of sense. I mean, think about it. There's Bill Gates, there's Steve Jobs, there's any number of extraordinary people out there who are doing extraordinary things. And we oftentimes refer to them as innovators. But when you look at them in the scheme of everybody else in their given class, should we say, if we were putting this in classroom terms, they would be considered outliers. So in actuality, I think that if we want to encourage creativity and innovation and building those essential skills of being able to adapt and think outside of our current constraints, for the 21st century and our students, what we're really asking for is for our students to be outliers, to be exceptional. And in order to do that, we need to provide them with opportunities and time in order to really be able to capture the unique moment when it's time to really utilize all of the skills that we've been preparing them for. So I have a couple of quick ideas for ways that we can actually encourage our students to be outliers or to embrace the outlier mentality of being able to capture the opportunities and take the time to weave those two pieces together to become something extraordinary. The first one is to actively seek out ways or areas that spark interests in your students. So we've all had this where when you hit upon that one activator, that one access point for a student, they totally overachieve. They do things that you had no idea they were capable of doing. I always tell the story of a young girl who was really struggling to read in 5th grade, and her teachers thought for sure that she would never be able to have the lead role in a musical because she'd have to memorize all of the scripts. Actually, that was the very best thing for her because it turned out that theater was her access point. And so the minute that we gave her the opportunity to really thrive in that environment, to take on that lead role, she actually did better in reading. She learned how to read faster and more fluently and with better comprehension because she had to be able to utilize those scripts, to be able to perform what was required of her. This happens all the time when you find the right access point. So be sure that you're taking some time to really seek out, find those access points for your students that are going to work. Is it art? Is it theater? Is it discussions or projects? Whatever it is, embrace it and use it as a way for students to have opportunities to move beyond what is a typical constraint for them in a classroom. Number 2 is to stop talking. I'm as guilty of this as the next person. You can ask anybody that we know. My team all the time tells me, stop talking. But it's so true when we're educators that we oftentimes talk way more than we need to in a classroom setting. Obviously, there are times when we need to do some direct instruction, and for that, we need to speak. But I challenge you to do a really unique exercise. I did this once in my own classroom, and it was so telling of my own weaknesses with talking. I set up a video camera and videotaped one entire day of me teaching, and that included about 7 or 8 classes. And when I videotaped that, I went back and I tallied up the amount of minutes that I spent talking in every single class and how many minutes I actually had students working or having their own discussions or somehow otherwise being actively engaged in the classroom that didn't require me talking. What I found in class after class after class, it didn't matter which one, I typically spoke for about 80% of it. And that left 20% of the time for my students to respond or to engage or to talk with each other. Really, it should be the reverse. So I challenge you to do an exercise like that. Even if it's just for one class, it will be so amazing to you to set up a video camera and nobody else has to see it, but just to kind of figure out how much are you talking and what is that taking away from your students? Because the more that they talk, the more that they engage, the more that they're leading the discussions, the better it's going to be for them. Number 3 is the freedom to fail. Now, we obviously don't want our students failing all the time. However, we all learn more from failure than we ever do from our successes. I love the acronym for FAIL of First Attempt in Learning. It's okay to let our students fail. And in fact, not just let them, but encourage them. Ask them to fail. Put it out there that is an expectation. My classroom totally changed when I told my students that I expected them to fail more than they succeeded. Now, that didn't mean that I was going to let them flounder. There is a part on the failure pendulum where you jump in and you provide some strategies and you work together with the student so that they move through the pendulum to the area of success. You never let them just fall to failure and not be able to pick themselves back up. However, allowing your students the opportunity to fail and then to not jump in right away, but allow them to figure out, why did I fail? What did I learn from that? What can I do better next time? And how am I going to apply that to the next piece that I do is really important. So set it up that in your classroom, failure is not only acceptable, it's expected. And number 4 is to always keep the element of surprise in your teaching. And this is something that I still do, even in my professional development trainings with teachers. I'll provide them with part of the story. I don't know if any of you remember the 60-minute segment, or not the 60-minute segment, I'm sorry, but the radio segment of Now for the Rest of the Story. It's so important to be able to provide those surprise moments where you think you know everything that is being presented to you, and then suddenly you provide a little twist. What happens is that your brain will actually ignite faster and kind of be more prepared for things to go awry. And we've all been there where our brain kind of gets used to things, everything is on autopilot. And so, we experience that in our own lives. How many times do our husbands tune us out, or our wives tune us out, or our children tune us out because they've heard the same story again and again, and they know what to expect in this situation? The same is true in our classrooms. So if you can insert just a small element of surprise, it's amazing how much more you'll get students to kind of be on edge and be ready and waiting for the next surprise to come their way. An example of this is when I do a professional development, I might show a masterwork, and I'll have my teachers kind of think about what are you seeing, what are you thinking, what are you wondering. We're going through that visual thinking strategy. And then at the end, after they think they've got it all figured out, I'll tell them something interesting about the piece that they didn't know. For instance, this is actually somebody's wedding portrait. How does that change everything that you've just thought about this piece? And suddenly it's like the entire piece was upended just by one small piece of information that they didn't have at the beginning. It's a powerful motivator, but it's also something that allows students to really push through that edge and kind of sit on the precipice of risk taking and not knowing what comes next and being comfortable with being uncomfortable. So I hope these 4 ideas for encouraging and cultivating outliers in your classroom has been helpful. And I'd love to hear some more of your ideas. What are some things that you've done in your classroom that really kind of capture this essence of pushing the boundaries and allowing your students to take those risks? I'd love to hear from you. Comment below. If you have any questions about what I shared today, comment below too, and I'll be sure to answer them along the way. One last piece, if you enjoyed this video segment today, if you're enjoying our video on demand series, I really highly encourage you to take a look at the Learning Studios. The Learning Studios is an online platform that we open up only twice a year, once in April and once in October. This contains all of our online classes, all of our videos, our podcasts, and our resources, everything that you could purchase on Ed Closet, as well as both of our online conferences in one online platform that you can purchase at a much reduced rate. So I highly encourage you to check it out. It's only open until April 30th. So the link is below. Please, please give it a look. And if it's something that will help you this summer, as you're looking for more professional development options, I highly encourage you to consider that before the end of the month closes. Until next time, I'll see you soon on Education Closet On Demand.